Alright, so we're back here at this page. We've got 2 mind control cankeries. Dear Lord, 1 was enough. No, there's 3. Holy shit, there's 3. Jesus Christ. We've amassed a coalition of eager volunteers ready to lay down their ghost lives for a worthy cause. You mean fighting Lord English? When we're ready for that, yes. But we need the treasure first. So for now, they're sailing well ahead of us in large numbers to attract his attention so he can do more damage to the ring and fill out the rest of our maps. We should be very grateful for their bravery. They are making a noble sacrifice for us all. Bravery, yeah right. I'm mostly sure she's mind controlling them. God damn it, Tavros! We really don't need your play-by-play commentary on everything. Wait, you're mind controlling all the ghosts? No, well, not all of them. Once you group enough together, others tend to latch on to the mob out of curiosity. We trolls have a way of clustering together naturally. You've got to understand, John, most of these people are pretty self-absorbed. They just need a little bit of persuasion to join the cause. Word. But, yeah, isn't that still kind of, dickish? But all these stubborn jackasses are going to double die anyway if we don't all work together and kill this guy. This is war, John. In times of war, difficult decisions have to be made with the lives of many. Just think of me as a general giving orders to my troops. It just happens that the orders are a little more direct in this case. Hey, Circuit Deuce, let's not lose track of who's actually in charge of this shit, okay? Yeah, all hail Her Imperious Teen Condescension, the fresh new face of tyranny, Supreme Admiral Pixis. At this time, I would like to motion for a 15-minute bowing break so that we may demonstrate our reverence for this bold, spunky leader. Yes. Tavros, stop bowing. That was a joke. No, keep doing that. Lower, Swabby. Lower. Face on the fucking deck. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. How do you mind control so many ghosts at once? Isn't that kind of hard? Well, I do have a little help. John, did I mention that my ancestor, she's the best? She is? I must admit, I was not in favor of the idea at first, but Vriska made a very strong case for using our combined powers in this way. In a perfect reality, no one would have to get hurt, but the stakes are too high to be shying away from such measures. See what I mean? She's just the best. No, we can't play Moonsetter for the mind control apologia part of the story. It's been wonderful spending so much time on this adventure with my descendant. Not just because it's helped me get to know her better, but because it's opened my eyes to things about myself I was never really in touch with. There are certain capabilities within me I've never quite been able to face, and she's helped me realize I've been hiding from them all my life, and well beyond. It must be true what they used to say on my world, that if you really want to know who you are, look to the legacy left behind by your ancestor. I think that wisdom works in both directions. Well put, Marquis. I've always felt the exact same way. Puke! Oh my glove, the Cirque twins being adorable again. Nitram, get your mop ready for swapping up all this vomit coming out my mouth. Ew, no. Can you two stick a fork in the sentimental carp? Maybe pretend you ain't hit it off so good. You ever stop and think about how this makes me feel? There's no reason to be jealous, Mina. You know nothing has changed about our friendship. Jealous? Bitch, no. Just makes me think about my kid descendant. And how instead of having this cool, friendly relation with her, I just got this uncontrollable urge to stab her to death so she don't threaten my supremacy. Which is a shame, because she's so cute. God damn my royal blood and the crate junk it makes me have to do. Ah, well, maybe someday I'll find an heiress who my genes don't instinctively make me want to murder on sight. Then I can teach her the badass ways of being a boss and shit. God, trolls are so weird. John just said that trolls are weird. He said it quietly, but I heard him. Hey, you snitch! Yeah, but aren't we? Moral of the story is the blue kid's dumb nerd, but is right when he says stuff. Look at that. It's like me and him are becoming fast friends, thus lulling him into a sense of false confidence already. What? Soon, my little whale. Soon. It is true, to a human, the ways of trolls from both Alternia and before us will seem very strange. In fact, prior to uniting in the afterlife, even the two groups of trolls were reasonably alien to one another. I've had a great deal of time to study the cultures of many species through paradox space. No matter which race you belong to, one can always find another whose ideals pose a challenge of comprehension to even the most open mind. And though the ethical standards of those from Alternia may seem unpalatable to you, rest assured there are beings elsewhere in the cosmos whose violent behavior would be considered extreme even to most trolls. Actually, John, I'm very glad you brought this up. because I was in the middle of a wonderful story about this very subject, which you interrupted when you boarded our ship. Oh, sorry. No, that's fine. Really, I'm quite pleased that you did. This way, I get to start over from the beginning. There were some rough patches in my original telling, which I can go back and fix. This time, it'll be much better. Okay, what's the story about? It is a tale about a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. Let us begin. Once upon a time, world building! There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. Arania, I thought you said you'd fix the shitty parts of the story. You started with that crappy line the first time, too. The opening line is fine. It's alright, I guess. Not. Oh, shut up and tell me, shut up and let me tell the story. Now, where was I? There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. Right. There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. But there was one cherub in particular who, for at least the first half of our story, will be our heroine. She spent eons roaming her galaxy completely alone, but the time had come for her to find a mate. This is no small task for a cherub. Being an asocial species, they spend virtually no time in each other's presence at all. Aside from when it is time to mate, they may go their entire lives without encountering another, and so they scatter their numbers through space, each stalking a territory spanning many light years. But like a predator is able to track the scent of its prey, a cherub can sense the presence of another nearby. This sense is especially strong if that cherub shares the same qualities its other half had once long ago, before it experienced the maturation process known as predomination. You see, when a young cherub hatches, it would appear that only one creature has begun its life, but the appearance is not to be trusted. The young cherub actually consists of two completely distinct beings, a male and female each sharing one body. The two halves are endowed with polar opposite predispositions as well, one predisposed towards malevolence, another toward benevolence, good or evil if you prefer to deal in simplistic terms, or at least those which are convenient for the sake of this story. I prefer to view the dichotomy as kind of a moral alignment, like an attribute that dictates the choices a character makes in certain types of games I used to play. The male and female halves can be aligned either way, as long as they differ from each other. The resulting conflict between the two personalities is central to life as a cherub, both before and after predomination. Shortly after hatching, the two halves begin vacillating, taking turns controlling the body. The only physical differentiation between the two is the coloration of their cheek swirls, which indicates alignment. There is otherwise no way to tell male and female apart before a cherub predominates. The vacillation process is demarcated by sleep. When the male goes to sleep, the female wakes up, and when the male wakes up, again the female sleeps, and so it goes, back and forth like this as the two identities vie for dominance over the other, and ultimately permanent control over the body. They grow to detest one another, and develop a view of social interaction centered entirely around animosity and confrontation. For good cherubs, this readies them for a long life of isolation, as they will prefer to avoid the sort of conflict that comes with social interaction, as they have been conditioned to understand it. But for evil ones, the contentious upbringing only serves to fuel their inclination to harm others. And though this duality makes for a tormented childhood, the inner conflict it creates is an extremely important part of a young cherub's life. The defining part, actually. It is the struggle a cherub must overcome to mature, and this process culminates in predomination. One half will prove to have a stronger will than the other. The less dominant half will then weaken over time, and it will eventually become clear to both that one will not survive. The dominant personality will then completely consume the other, integrating it in such a way that only one is left. The cheeks will become solidly colored, and the cherub will grow to maturity as a single being, endowed with the alignment of the dominant half, and with all his or her personal qualities at the forefront of the union. In the case of our heroine, she was the good half, and the day of her predomination was in a sense the day her brother died, and thought it was to her benefit and personal growth. Because of this loss, she would always live with a sense that something was missing. Every sexually mature cherub lives with this feeling. It drives them to seek out another cherub similar to the half they lost, the part of their being which they grew up in perpetual conflict with. The desire to travel the universe in hopes of reigniting that conflict is very important to their species. It's the force which compels them to procreate. So she set out to track his scent, as it were, and soon she found a physical trail as well, a path of carnage left behind by a particularly destructive male cherub. She followed the debris from civilized worlds and star systems he left behind, as if to mock her, to make it clear he knew her pursuit was all but paving her way with the deed. His brutality made her more furious, thus setting the mood, so to speak, for their imminent courtship. Hey! So these two trolls were crowdfunded as part of the Hive Swap Kickstarter, and it was openly declared they will only exist for one frame and then they will die terribly. A cherub of his alignment is seemingly motivated by little other than to conquer and destroy. From a bioexistential perspective, they behave somewhat like viruses attacking the system from within, but as with all symbiotic organisms living within a universe, there are balancing factors. While those inhabiting an evil cherub's territory will regard it as unpredictable tyrant, those in the territory of a good cherub will likely come to view it as a protector, waiting quietly from millennia in deep space, ready to attack any encroaching threat. In that sense, they are not unlike cells in a universal immune system. Blah! This balance of forces allows stability, such that life and new civilizations can blossom and thrive within a universe, thus assuring the possibility of its own elaborate procreation process. But if that balance was ever disturbed, it would lead to chaos in that biosystem. The universe could not survive for long, and if by some means a cherub with such destructive tendencies were to achieve unprecedented power, the resulting imbalance would be catastrophic for Paradox Space itself. And though the heroine of our story could have no way of knowing, this is exactly what would result from the pursuit of her kisses. Like humans, cherubs perceive romance through only one quadrant. Unlike humans, their relationships are exclusively black, but their mating ritual is much more violent than any practice trolls would or even physically could engage in. And though it is critical to the perpetuation of their race, the confrontations can sometimes be lethal to one or both cherubs. Regardless of the outcome, the stakes are always high. The winner of the duel will assume control of the other's territory, while the loser will slink away to bear the offspring. So as she toured the planetary wreckage, she knew her quest for a mate was not just about the propagation of her species, but the liberation of billions from a monster. She pursued him for many sweeps with mounting obsession, until one day the trail came to an end at a black hole. Cherubs typically seek out black holes as the setting for their mating rituals, but not any black hole. Once long ago it was a star, and circling that star was a planet. That planet was home to one of the presently sparing cherubs. The male in this case returned to the site of his hatching to mate, a location now conspicuously occupied by a truly massive black hole. This was where she found him, and this was where they would duel. Oh boy. While an adult cherub is a fearsome creature and would be a formidable opponent to anyone in its unaltered state, this is not the form in which they do battle with each other. The ritual is more extreme and physically demanding than any other kind of courtship or duel in the universe. The moment they meet, they will both undergo a dramatic metamorphosis. The mates then duel as two vast, frightening serpents, each an astronomical unit in length. Oh boy. The tangled struggle between the green Aus is exceedingly brutal and can last for sweeps. While dueling in such a monstrous form, their energy is inexhaustible. The transformation taps into the cherub's latent connection with the enigmatic forces presiding over all that is eternal, and permeating all those endowed with immortality. Normally, this power is only accessible to them during mating. In this form, they are only able to be injured by one another, and are otherwise indestructible. Hence, the ritual can never be stopped by an outside force until it is complete. No. Pardon me. It should come as no surprise that in this story our heroine was victorious. Upon defeating her mate, she initiated the interlocking formation to complete the coupling, while assuming the dominant position, a stance undetectable to all but the most astute observers of the zoologically dubious. Consequently, the male was fertilized with the young. He then slithered away in the disgrace from the territory he just lost, a cherub near a massive dying star. The egg is deposited on the planet's surface, and the rising temperature from the expanding red giant will incubate the egg until it is ready to hatch. Later in life, the cherub will grow wings, assuming it has matured properly, and if it has learned to fly well enough to reach a safe distance from the nest before the star goes supernova, soon the hungry cherub will return and feast on the resulting stellar energy. Doing so allows it to gain enough strength to travel great distances and claim its own territory. The star will then collapse into a black hole, serving as a distinct gravitational beacon to the cherub later in life, so it may return there to mate. As it happens, our heroine's mate discovered Earth, long after it journeyed to a new sun, and long since new civilizations had risen and fallen. Now on the brink of destruction from its dying star, its barren accommodations were ideal for a young cherub. There he deposited his single egg and flew away, never to return. No cherub ever spawns more than one offspring at a time, for it is every cherub's destiny to grow up alone. Or alone on the outside, at least. From that egg hatched one very special cherub with two names, one that few will ever know, and one that few should ever say. A fascinating thing about cherub reproduction is how the parent's alignment is passed on to the young. If the male lays the egg, the alignments of the child's two halves will be the same as the parent's. If the female lays the egg, the alignments will be flipped, and the young male and female halves will be endowed with opposing alignments of the parents. As such, the male half took after his father. Perhaps the son even exceeded him in violent tendencies. It is hard to imagine there has ever been a cherub more willfully destructive or as stubbornly dedicated to conquest than the monstrosity he would grow up to become. Due to his indomitable... Oh my god. Clowned. Due to his indomitable nature, I believe victory over his sister was a foregone conclusion. Barring a highly improbable glitch in causality, it would be impossible for her to predominate over someone like him, and even so, he didn't have the patience to wait, unfortunately for everyone, to ever exist. He discovered a way to predominate early, yet it was not this act alone that would prove ominous, so much as the means through which it was achieved. He was allowed to become the solo player of a game which his kind was never ever meant to play, and so, it is with the predomination of her son that our heroine's story ends, and the story of our villain begins. Hey, Mina, where are you going? I'm taking a gaper break. God. But the story isn't over yet. Girl, your story's... What? Oh! Fafetta has exploded. Girl, your stories never end. My bladder can't even deal with this. Just keep talking while I'm gone. No, that's okay. We can wait. I already heard the damn story, though. Not all of it. Glubber fuck, can't you just keep yapping about snake sacks while I hit the little grubs room already? I'm afraid not. Everyone must listen to the full story. Oh my fucking god, you really are turning evil, aren't you? I would be proud except for how terrible and boring the actual consequences are for me personally. Wait, does this mean that when you're a ghost you still have to pee? None of your business, blue kid. That's so weird. Am I the only one who thinks that's weird? No, John, it's definitely pretty weird that ghosts have to pee. You get used to life as a ghost pretty fast, though. But weren't you already pretty used to peeing when you were alive? Yeah, that's why you get used to it pretty fast, moron. This is kind of a stupid conversation. Can we hear more about the snakes and whatnot? It was a pretty cool story. Yes! As soon as Mina returns from her visit to the load gaper. Holy mackerel! Can you shitfucks just enjoy your space lizard porn while I take a fucking piss? I think we could all stand to take a brief intermission from the story regardless, to let all these intriguing facts about cherubs sink in. Ugh, you and your intermissions. What is it with the intermissions? They ain't even intermissions most of the time. They're just an excuse to tell another dumb story inside a longer, dumber story. Yes, Mina, you are correct. And your reservations are noted. However, would it change your mind if I were to propose not an intermission, but an interfission? Wink, 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 wink. Fine, let's do the interfission thing you said, because of fish. BRB, you scrubs. Begin interfission. Eye patch guy fell the fuck down. Like captor, I guess. So, what are we doing here? I see. Get thanks, bye. Anyway, where was I? The heroine story ends and the villain story begins. The heroine story ends and the villain story begins, I think. Yes, that's right. It is with the predomination of her son that our heroine story ends and the story of our villain begins. But as we all know, beginnings are not always so easy to pinpoint in Paradox Space. One could say his story began the day he claimed immortality, or the moment his being was inexplicably confined to a juju, allowing him access to any realm in which his vessel would capriciously materialize. But for the sake of linearity, we may as well say his story began the day he and his sister were hatched. When a cherub hatches, the two undeveloped personalities mingle together in the same body. There is not yet a clear division between the two. It will then consume the eggshell for the vital nutrients it contains. The sugary snack is irresistible to the starving wiggler. Once it finishes its first meal, the two personalities will be pulled apart for good, and the child will pupate. The two halves then begin vacillating with their sleep cycles, as I described before. As you might expect, the female child was as cheerful and friendly as could be. She took after her mother in every way, at least the way her mother used to be, long before she was hardened by centuries of isolation and the obsessive pursuit of justice. And to Justice's little surprise, the male child was an insufferable brat. Honk! It is just as well that cherub parents abandon their offspring. Raising such a child by the familial standards of any race would be a monumental challenge. Nevertheless, it would seem that there were those who tried. Details in my research suggest our villain had a number of acolytes operating in the shadows, preparing for his arrival. We will probably never know who these scurrilous conspirators were, but it is evident that at some point the cherub was locked in a room, either out of exasperation or for its own good, until it was old enough to enter the session. The children were left with everything a young cherub could ever want: meat, candy, computers, a lifetime supply of special stardust, and of course, their precious jujus. The acolytes had clearly gone to great lengths to harvest such items from all over the cosmos, so they could lavish their young master with gifts. They may have been prisoners, yes, but if you ask me, these children were very spoiled. While the female was preparing for a collaborative approach to the game, the male was plotting furiously against her. He never had any intention of working with her at all. As far as he was concerned, the game was his and his alone to conquer. One day, he put his plan into motion. He had his sister's dream self assassinated on Prospect. The next time she went to sleep, she would never wake up again. When her brother woke up, he became the sole occupant of the body. He then freed himself from his chains and launched the session by himself. But this game was never meant to be played solo. Its format is inherently cooperative. The diversity of players, the combination of their efforts and aspects. This is what awakens the true creative potential of the game. Without them, a session will wither and die. If one enters alone, it completely alters the nature of the game. It changes its purpose. For a solo player, a challenging quest becomes an insurmountable one. A reward of infinite promise becomes a boon of far more sinister. The gauntlet which the player must overcome is seemingly designed to be impossible. For all intents and purposes, it is not actually a game at all. It is a death sentence for any player foolish enough to attempt the challenge. But it bears repeating, this was a very special cherub. He entered what is called a dead session. This qualifies as both null and void session, but is even less than either of those. Compared to a typical session, it is almost unrecognizable. Before the game begins, sky is blotted out with dark layers of clouds. Its light is extinguished for good. There is no planet waiting for the player in the medium, so instead, he brings his with him. But when he arrived, there was no heroic journey for him to embark on. There was nothing. No sprite, no consorts, no underlings. The land has no name. Those things all needed to be unlocked. To unlock his true quest, he was forced to undergo a series of excruciatingly tedious trials. Only then would the way to the planet's core be revealed. There he would consult with the most monstrous denizen of all. And while such trials might discourage most players from even trying, our villain's response was quite the contrary. He was only emboldened by the mind-numbing chores. He took to them with gusto, as if performing them out of spite. Oh, I see. So, every adventure is a series of keys that unlocks a whole. That's what it is. If you distill every adventure down to every story to its most core component, the characters in it find a thing that opens a thing. Maybe it's something in themselves, maybe it's something in the world, maybe it's an idea, but that's what it is. But here, in this land that is denied imagination by a single solitary character, there's nothing here to be discovered. There's just work to do. And with perseverance, he found the final door and unlocked it. Waiting for him on the other side was a terrible creature named Yaldabaoth. His denizen would allow him a brief audience, one just long enough for him to make the choice. Oh boy. God, it's fucking huge. No denizen has ever been mistaken for pleasant company, but the self-proclaimed god of all monsters is notoriously inhospitable to his players. His choices are known for their wild extremes, and to this player, in this session, he offered his most extreme choice of all. It was the choice between a path of conquest and a path of sacrifice. But this is putting it lightly. In a tongue only his player could understand, he described what the path of the martyr entailed. In short, it involves nothing. The player chooses to walk away from the temptation of power, to surrender all ambition, and to welcome death itself. In exchange for this pledge comes a promise. The player sacrifice is assured to benefit all who will ever live. In death, the player would later be in the position to help bring an end to a force of unfathomable evil and destruction. A force which was unleashed, for instance, by someone who once opted for the other. Yaldabaoth then described what it meant to choose the path of the conqueror. It was a path for a more active player, to be sure. The player's mettle as a conquering force would be tested directly and repeatedly, one by one. He would have to conquer and destroy a number of planets spawned for him in the session. Each would be more difficult than the last. After destroying them all, his true land would become unlocked. He would then return to face his denizen again and defeat him in combat. If successful, his reward would be unprecedented. He would receive the boon of unconditional immortality, where resurrection would not be linked with just heroic would not be linked with the just or heroic nature of death. It's unclear how this boon would be awarded, since to my knowledge it is beyond even the ability of a denizen to allow. But through whatever mechanism the boon is bestowed, immortality is only the beginning. The player is somehow also imbued with a limitless supply of power, enough to destroy anything he wishes, for as long as he wants. And knowing the villain of our story, anything he wanted would be everything, and as long as he wants would be forever. Yes, knowing our villain, the choice he would make is quite clear. Knowing him, in fact, proves it could hardly be considered a choice at all. It was at this point the real game begins. Skya would undergo a dramatic transformation, becoming even darker and heavier. Soon, it would become a very massive, solid sphere. It began to generate heat within, due to rising density. The surface begins to crack. The resulting explosion is known as the first break. From the primordial blast emerged 15 planets for the player to conquer. They would scatter and ricochet at high velocity before settling into orbit in the medium. The break is a very violent phenomena, though. Not all planets will necessarily clear the blast before the Skyan debris settles into its final state. The vast amount of resulting matter then collapses into a black hole. Its gravitational pull is tremendous. Any object within range will be sucked in and destroyed. Those planets which settle into orbit will be safe for the time being, but in the case of our villain's session, 3 of the planets did not make it and fell into the black hole. A very lucky break for him. It meant that he would only have to conquer 12 planets instead. This bit of good fortune could very well have been the difference which allowed him to overcome a nearly impossible challenge. His task was to destroy all these planets in order, each within a time allowance that gets shorter with every planet. To destroy a planet, first it must be conquered. He would have to overcome all forces of resistance on the planet, and ultimately defeat whatever powerful underling ruled there. Then, much like he did to unlock the quest in the first place, he would have to travel to the planet's core. There he would retrieve a bomb, and return it to the surface. If he did not accomplish this in time, the bomb would detonate in the core, and the game would be lost automatically. The bomb is not powerful enough to destroy the planet alone. In fact, its purpose is not to damage the planet at all, but to move it. So he must bring it to a designated location on the surface. When it explodes, the planet will be knocked out of orbit and sucked into the hole. Of course, he must make sure he has moved on to the next planet before this happens. He repeats this process for each planet until they are all gone. There is one caveat, though. He must skip the 8th planet. If he sinks that one before any of the others, it will result in the destruction of the entire session. Thus, it must be the final planet he conquers. Upon destroying the 8th planet, his true land will reveal itself. The dead planet will come to life, and there he must prepare for the battle with his denizen. He may sharpen his combat skills, craft new weaponry, anything he can do to improve his chances against a very powerful endgame foe. Fortunately for him, he would not have to face the monster alone. By then, he will have accumulated a party of loyal minions. Hey! With each planet he destroys, he will be awarded a new leprechaun follower. Even if a planet was destroyed in the break, he will still be awarded that planet's leprechaun upon destroying the planet preceding it. Sort of like a 2-for-1 deal. Wait, hold on. Leprechauns? Yes, John. I'm delighted to see you have pounced at what is clearly the most interesting part of the story thus far. Leprechauns are a fascinating mythical race, although there is some dispute among scholars as to whether they are actually a breed of gnome. I can't say I blame you for being speechless. There are no doubt hundreds of questions swirling in your head at once about these wonderful creatures. Where do I even begin? You must forgive me. I find it very difficult to resist going on at length about them. I just think they're just so great. For instance, I can and have given lectures for weeks at a time on their marvelous and wildly varying magical abilities. More intriguing yet would be any medium to long-form harangue on the topic of their culture and customs, most of which revolve around luck. But most captivating of all, and the subject upon which I will now assiduously expound, would be the positively scintillating subject of leprechaun romance. No! Fuck! The problem is that when the subject of leprechaun romance is broached, our overly obsessive troll intellects instantly assume the most ingratiating posture of admiration imaginable. Which makes it hard to give it proper academic focus, I mean, because of how great it is. But we will do our best to understand regardless. Trolls have only 4 forms of romance, and though we consider it a complicated subject spanning a wide range of emotions, social conventions, and implications for reproduction, it is ultimately a superficial slice of what leprechauns consider the full body of romantic expression. Our concept of romance, in spite of its capacity to fill our art and literature and to rule our individual destinies like little else, is still just that, a single quaternary concept. A concept is usually denoted by 4 symbols. Heart, spade, diamond, club. Leprechaun romance is more complicated than that. Leprechaun romance needs 9 symbols. The 9 quadrants of leprechaun romance are considerably more nuanced than our quaint notions of romance and certainly more alien. In fact, so conditioned is my own understanding of romance that I can't help but refer to them as quadrants, when in fact they are not quadrants at all. They are referred to as charms. One of the charms is characterized by romantic love, as understood by both trolls and humans, but after that, all bets are off. There is no division between black or red, concupiscent or conciliatory. Instead, their charms comprise a spectral continuum of more subtle varying types of relationships, most of which are established in mutual chicanery, such as the exchange of pranks, coy riddles, slapstick shenanigans, and games of chance. Furthermore, a pair of leprechauns is not limited to a single charm. A relationship may be defined by multiple charms at once. In fact, some of the most interesting relationships arise from the exotic charm combinations. A stable relationship consisting of 3 or more charms is called a trove. These advanced relationships are often viewed as the ideal end result for a romance, much the way certain pairing rituals are for humans. No charm is specifically tied to procreation, though any type of relationship could begin waxing concupiscent if Lady Luck should so decide. Certain charm combinations are known to be more conducive to fertility than others. If the leprechaun pair has been so blessed, they will begin an elaborate coupling procedure, culminating in a lively mating jig. The jigs are specific to the charms, of course, similar to how different kinds of music lends themselves to various styles of dance. While their romance is endlessly captivating, leprechaun reproduction may be the most interesting subject of all, particularly from a perspective of detailed anatomical study, which I will get to shortly. But first, it bears pointing out that while for humans reproductive relationships are exclusively heterosexual, and for trolls they are bisexual, for leprechauns wow, what a story! But I wasn't finished. Wasn't that story great, everyone? Wow! You really liked it that much, Vriska? Hell yeah! Oh my god, that leprechaun stuff, so good, right guys? Wow, well, I would be happy to continue then if you mind, Fang. Have I told you how great it's been to get to know each other and team up on adventures and stuff? I really feel like You've helped me get in touch with my ancestral roots, mainly as a kick-ass storyteller. It was like this whole part of my personality I was never aware of. Like the part that's compelled to just outright explain tons of really interesting things to people while aspiring no details whatsoever. It's made me feel a lot closer to understanding my aspect as well as closer to you. So I just wanted to say, thanks. Aw, you're welcome. I feel the exact same way about my time with you. You really helped me get in touch with the true pirate within. I saw in you the adventurous spirit I always wished I could be. You helped me finally understand the virtue in rationalizing questionable decisions and behaving unscrupulously for the greater good. Stop. You're going to make me start tearing up. Get over here and give me a hug, Alpha Sister. Hug. Gag. Choke. Oh boy.
I don't feel like this partnership is going to last much longer.